That's a good question. It's now or never for him. That's for sure. They probably got 4 spots locked up. It's up to him. I mean, he's got talent. There's no question about that. It's all going to depend on what kind of preseason he has. I mean, the problem is he's got to convince them he deserves reps. He deserves playing time.
All right, thanks for hanging with us today. We are Sports Take. Rob Ellis, Derek Gunn, Barrett Brooks, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network. Joining us right now, and you can find his great work and what an add to the team he was at JAKIBsports.com. Excellent piece today on Dick Vermeil and Wilbert Montgomery, one of his centerpieces when he was here with the Eagles. He also coached with them later with the Rams. Nearly 4 decades with the Philadelphia Daily News, and he is a Hall of Fame selector himself. So who better to talk to on this weekend than Paul Domowitch? Domo, welcome to the show, man. How you doing?
Domo.
Thanks, guys. Good to be with you.
Domo, are you in Canton or are you at the friendly confines in South Jersey?
I am about 15 minutes north of Canton on the 15th fairway of Firestone Country Club.
All right, worst places to be in life, that's for sure. Right there.
Man, he leads a good life.
Yeah, no doubt. Domo, so let's talk about Dick Vermeil, who will be enshrined tomorrow, along with the rest of the members of the class of 2022 in the Hall of Fame. Look, it's been a long wait. This is a guy who started coaching in the NFL in 1976 with the Eagles and remarkably took 14 years off from coaching, went back, ended up winning one with the Rams, finished up with the Chiefs. It was an incredible journey, but it's taken a while to get there, man. Just tell me, for someone who covered him for as many years as you did, just your sense of what this means.
To him, it means everything. I mean, I've never seen a guy that, even before he got in, that wanted to get. Every time you talk to him, you knew how much it meant to him. And anybody that's watched the show, the NFL film show on NFL Network, where Kurt Warner knocked on his door, he already knew that he was getting in. But they surprised him and had, the quarterback that helped him win a Super Bowl give him the news. And I mean, it's huge. I mean, there's going to be a lot of, there are going to be a lot of tears tomorrow.
Yeah, what did we set the over under at, guys? Like 2 minutes in?
2 minutes,
yeah.
Hey, Domo, with you being a part of the voting committee, the one thing I want to know about, especially when it comes to Vermeil, when you look at the lengthy hiatus that he took between coaching stints as a pro coach compared to other coaches who've made the Hall of Fame, what was the criteria that you guys arrived at in terms of why he deserved to be in the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, well, there's actually a separate smaller committees made up of guys on our larger committee that pick a coach each year for us to vote on and pick a senior player. So I wasn't a part of that. And I lobbied for him beforehand. And, as I pointed out in one of the stories I wrote about him, if you just go by the numbers, there, you could make a case that there are about 5 other guys, including Mike Holmgren, most notably, that have, either better win percentages, better, 2 Super Bowls rather than 1, a better winning percentage. But, you've got to also, with coaches, you've got to take in mind what they took over. And he took over 2 abysmal teams in Philadelphia and St. Louis, and the Eagles. I mean, he had nothing to work with. I mean, Mike McCormick, who had preceded him, had used every premium draft pick to try to get over the hill, to get veterans he thought he could win with right away, which backfired. And so Vermeil for 3 years had no pick above the 3rd or 4th round. So
wow,
it was difficult. I mean, that's I believe that the Super Bowl team had 13 undrafted players on it.
Wow.
So that he had a good personnel department. He made players better, clearly, and they wanted to play for him, even though his camps were hard. So all that overrode maybe that other guys had better records.
Okay.
Who wrote his speech? Did he write it himself, or did he have somebody write for him?
I'd have to guess. I'd probably think he wrote it, Barrett. He's very detailed. I know when I did an interview with him at his house, in April, he was in the process of in putting together the invitation list of players. And I mean, that was a monumental task. He ended up inviting like 375 to 400 players.
Oh my
Oh my
goodness.
God.
He gave Carl Peterson the task of of inviting the coaches and executives that he had coached with. So I doubt he had some. I doubt he hired a speechwriter. I think everything he says on tomorrow afternoon is going to come from his own heart.
Yeah,
Oh,
Damo,
my
you,
goodness.
you mentioned in your piece today just from a player, not even coach or personnel, over 200
Yeah.
former players. Like, that's a hell of a lot of players. I know he coached a
Yeah.
long time, man, but that speaks volumes about the loyalty, he endears from these guys.
Yeah. I mean, you guys have been around a lot of coaches. Barrett, you've played for so many coaches. In 40 years, I don't know of a coach that had the relationship long term that he has had with his players. I mean, they had 5 years ago when he turned 80, 15 of his former Eagle players from his teams. Most of these guys, and not all of them, lived in Philadelphia. Some came, like Wilbert, came from Florida. They had threw him a surprise birthday party. I don't think we're going to see that from the Rams when Sean McVay is 85 years old. I'm just guessing. I mean, that maybe
You only have about 50 years to go, Damo. So, I mean, it's going to be a little while.
Oh man.
But the story was about what Wilbert meant to him and what he meant to Wilbert. And while that's an extreme case, I mean, that's probably the epitome of the affection he has had with his players. He has it with a number of others. I mean, you could talk to guys, he held a charity golf tournament for like 27, 28 years. Some of these guys couldn't hardly walk anymore because of, what football did to them. And they'd be coming from California, from Texas, just because they felt obligated to Dick to be there. He finally realized what was going on, and that some of these guys, it was a real trial for them. And he finally canceled the tournament out of his concern for them.
Wow.
Damo, when you look at the career of a Dick Vermeil, and obviously you've had the opportunity to interview him and sit across from him one-on-one, what's first and foremost is your impression of Dick Vermeil when you come away?
Well, I mean, he's the most emotional coach I've ever dealt with, but I mean, you're getting honesty. He's never going to lie to you. There's a lot of coaches that are truthful, but there's just a sincerity with him that you don't see in a lot of coaches. You don't see in a lot of people, and I mean, which comes out when he talks about people, when he cries about people. So I guess that's the biggest takeaway with him is just, the kind of man he is.
Well, how about the Rams years? I mean, he takes 14 years off, which is unprecedented. I got to think about how that would play today, but 14 years. He loses his starter in a preseason game the year that they win it. And, basically gives the keys over to some guy, a total unknown. And they go from like 0 to 180, become the best show on turf, and win the whole thing in one of the craziest Super Bowls where, you see perhaps the best tackle in Super Bowl history, which keeps the guy from scoring for 10. There were just so many things that happened that second go round with him that are just like storybook stuff. No wonder there are movies made about him.
Well, he went into that knowing he had to change a little bit. He delegated more right off the bat, gave his coaches more responsibility, but he still thought he could push players the way he did back in the late 70s. And he couldn't, because this was right after the start of free agency. Players just weren't going to tolerate 3-hour practices twice a day during training camp. But it took him 2 years to learn that. I mean, there were some player rebellions. Kurt Warner talks about them. John Bunning talks about them. How these guys refused to come out to practice one day just because they were constantly wanted him to ease up, and he finally, by the third year, he did, and he changed. And then Trent Green goes down, and he's got no quarterback. He believed in Kurt Warner, but Kurt Warner hadn't played a down. I think he played one game in the NFL the previous season, threw maybe 9 passes. So there were questions about him. But what Dick did, he didn't let any, if he had any doubts, he didn't let him show. I mean, he stood up immediately after Trent Green went down and said, we're going to win, and we're going to win football games with Kurt Warner. And that, in talking to Kurt, that meant a lot to him. I mean, he knew he could play, had a lot of confidence, but to hear your coach say that meant a lot. And so I think that, Kurt ended up throwing 41 touchdown passes that year. And Dick will be the first to admit he had 5 Hall of Famers on that team.
Right.
4 plus Corey Holt, who will be in the Hall of Fame one of these years. I mean, he's been a finalist 3 times. So, I mean, he had some offensive weapons: Marshall Faulk, Isaac Bruce, Holt, Orlando Pace. But finally everything came together that last year. And if he had stayed, he probably would have won another Super Bowl. And because they went back 2 years later with Mike Martz and lost. But I think that's the fact that he quit right away, the fact that he lost the Super Bowl with the Eagles in '80 were probably 2 contributing factors to why it took him so long to get into the Hall of Fame. I mean, Tom Flores got in before him, mainly because Tom Flores beat him in 1980 Super Bowl and ended up with 2 Super Bowl wins rather than Dick. So
when you take the win-loss out of both sessions, when he coached, what would you say was his best accomplishment? I'm just taking the Super Bowls out. We know he won it with his second stint, but his first stint, what would you say he did the best coaching job out of both places?
Well, I mean, I think, the first coach with the Eagles, Barrett, he had to be hard on them. I mean, he had nothing. I mean, there were guys that they hadn't won in a long time, didn't know how to win. And I think he had to be hard on them. You could be back then because that was the way it was. And so, but the problem was, and what ended up contributing to his burnout was that he thought he had to do everything by himself rather than learn how to delegate. Second time around, I mean, I think he didn't do as much hands-on coaching. He delegated better, but he ended up, he had a good staff. I mean, he started when he first got there, he hired Bud Carson as his defensive coordinator. Bud only lasted a year before he had health issues, but then he hired John Bunning, who was an excellent, he was his linebackers coach. He promoted him. He hired Mike Martz right before that Super Bowl season. And Mike, for all his shortcomings, was a heck of an offensive coach. So I think I think he did a better job as far as hands-on coaching the first time around. I think the second time around with the Rams, what helped him win that Super Bowl was his ability to know he had to just let other people do things and had to change the way he approached his dealings with players.
Domo, let me ask about present day. I know obviously you're still keeping an eye on what's happening with the Eagles, and it feels like all roads lead back to Hurts. And if that's where you're headed, by all means. What's your sense of this season, how good they are? What's the ceiling here for this team?
Well, I'd sure like to see him in person, Rob, but I can't get a credential to training camp.
Yeah. I mean, you only covered the team for the NFL for 40 some years.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, that's wrong. That's wrong.
And now I work for the 33rd team, who just hired Bill Parcells and Bill Cowher. I'm guessing they can get credentials. Anyway, I'm not going to belabor that point. I think, if they stay healthy, I think they're going to be a very good team. I think they're an 11-12 win team. Obviously, it all comes down to Jalen. I still think, I believe he's going to improve. The question is, what's his ceiling? Is it high enough to to get them over make them a team that can go deep into the playoffs? He's got weapons. I mean, there's nothing right now. He's got the best offensive line in the league. So, I mean, there's no excuse right now for this offense not to be very, very good this year. And defensively, I mean, I found fault with Howie many times during his career, but you got to give him credit for what he's, the improvements he's made this offseason. They should have a much better pass rush. Their defensive line is going to be versatile. I mean, they can move all those guys all over. I mean, I think I would not be surprised to see a lot of Jordan Davis on the edge in sub packages, just because, I mean, what tackle or tight end can stop the combination of power and speed that he brings? So, I think you're going to see the sacks go up. They've improved at linebacker. So, Injuries always are a telling factor as the season goes along. But I mean, I think this team can win, 11, 12 games and make a serious move in, deeper into the playoffs than they did last year when it was a given that they weren't going to make it past the first round.
Do you see the run game staying like it is, or do you think they have to advance as far as what they do on the offensive side of the ball?
Yeah, Barrett, I got to believe that what they don't want to do what they did last year. I think they did that out of necessity. I mean, it saved their season changing to the running so much. But I mean, I think they've got to find a better balance this year. You want to find a better balance. You didn't bring A.J. Brown in, and you don't have these weapons to run the ball 35, 40 times a game every week. So I think Nick's going to try to find some balance there, assuming Jalen, is up to the task.
Damo, you always keep a wider scope on this too. NFC East, has Dallas come back to the pack a little bit? Could there be a surprise in Washington? I know the Giants is kind of a rebuild here with Dable. What's your sense of the East?
Yeah, I think Dallas has come back a little bit. Washington's intriguing. I still think, for all of Wentz's faults, I still got to believe he's got some good football left in him. And I think, the thing about going to Washington is I think Scott Turner, the offensive coordinator down there, is a guy that could get them. He's an underrated offensive mind who I think can get more out of Carson than we've seen the last, few years since his last year in Philadelphia. So I think they're going to be better than maybe we think right now.
Mm-hmm.
The Giants, I like Dable, so we'll see. I don't know if he's got enough talent. I'm not as down on Daniel Jones as a lot of people are. But I mean, it's going to come down to, their line play, because they need Saquon Barkley to be what Saquon Barkley was a few years ago. So, but the division is there for the Eagles. I mean, it's not like last year where you just felt the Cowboys were head and shoulders above everyone else.
I'm glad you brought up the Giants. I was going to ask you, is Dable the guy to bring the most out of Daniel Jones, since you believe Daniel Jones is better than a lot of people have critiqued him?
Yeah. Well, I mean, all you can go by is the past.
Right.
And, what he's done with Josh Allen up in Buffalo. So it'll be interesting. It's kind of one of those things to see how they use him. Do they play to his strengths? But I think Daniel Jones has a better chance with this guy than he's had in the past.
Let me ask you, Damo, when it comes to Nick Sirianni, certainly last year you go from 4 wins to 9 wins. He gets them in the playoffs. I don't think any of us saw that coming. They did do it a little bit unconventional on offense, but you got to do what you got to do. Just going into his second year now, he turned over the play calling to Steichen. He's a guy who's kind of rah-rah-ish, whatever, but it seems to connect with his players. I haven't heard you do any kind of analysis on just him in general. What do you think about Sirianni?
Yeah, I like Nick. It was easy to, and I was probably as guilty as anyone initially with, some of the, the things he was doing that kind of were easy pickings as far as criticizing. But I mean, I think he's got a good relationship with, I think he's the locker room is on his side right now. I think he's got a good coaching staff. I think Jonathan Gannon got a lot of criticism last year that was undeserved because I think he had to be as vanilla as he was because of what he was playing with. I mean, I think he was just trying to survive. He just he was trying to keep teams out of the end zone. And to a certain degree, he did that. I forget what they finished in points allowed, but it wasn't horrible. But this year he's got weapons on defense that, we're going to find out just how good or mediocre Jonathan Gannon is as a coach this year, because I think we're going to see a lot more imagination in his defense, a lot more blitzing. Nakobe Dean, I think, can be he was a terrific blitzer at Georgia. So, I mean, you've got to use that weapon. You got to use Jordan Davis in various roles. We'll see what Fletcher Cox has anything left. He's got a good staff with him. I think he's smart enough to use these guys. Right now, whether he's good enough to take a team to the Super Bowl, who knows? I mean, until 2017, I don't know that anybody thought Doug Peterson could ever get a team to the Super Bowl.
Right.
Good point. Domo, as we sit here today, and from what we've seen of a Jalen Hurts and everything we keep hearing about him in camp this year, do you think he has the makeup to improve his game significantly or marginally?
Well, that's $1 million question. He's improved every year. Again, we don't know what his ceiling is, though. He's in the same offense for the first time since high school, two years in a row. That's got to help. I don't know. He worked with other coaches during that period when you're not allowed to work with your own coaches, which is not a good thing.
Right.
But did he learn bad habits? Did he learn things that are going to make him better? I don't know. I mean, one of my biggest takeaways with him last year, which I thought he had to find a way to improve, was he could not move to his left. I mean, when defenses made him go left, it was, his completion percentage was much lower.
Yep.
His accuracy was much lower. And teams were basically taking away the right side, making him run a lot longer to get outside of the right side. So, has he learned to throw better when he's moving left? I don't know. And again, I haven't seen any training camps. So I think people have been a little bit too critical of, what he's done in a couple of team drills and this. I think you got to give a quarterback all a training camp, all the preseason before you really start picking apart his performance.
That's the whole offense as a whole, though, because a lot of people get, the defense is dominating, right? Well, that's what happens in training camp. That's what they do in training camp. There are going to be situations where the defense will be ahead of the game. It's not until you see them against an opposing offense who hadn't jumped all the routes, who hadn't seen all the route covers, who know the little idiosyncrasies of the whole offense, that you'll really see who this team and what they bring to the table. But
absolutely,
when we go from each player, what do you think that Jalen Reagor as becoming a good wide receiver in this league, is that opportunity, that ship sailed away, or is it, is he at a point now where he can change a little bit?
That's a good question. It's now or never for him. That's for sure. They probably got 4 spots locked up. It's up to him. I mean, he's got talent. There's no question about that. It's all going to depend on what kind of preseason he has. I mean, and the problem is he's got to convince them he deserves reps. He deserves playing time. My guess is that what I've seen of him last year and as a rookie, I'd be very surprised if he makes any kind of, if we're talking about him in week 1 or 2 and saying, holy cow, he made an incredible move. But will he make this club? I think that's still a possibility. I mean, because it's his last year, unless nobody's going to jump out and offer them a fortune for him. So, it's a very good possibility he ends up as their 5th receiver.
Dabo, last one from me here. How do you see this playing out with Deshaun Watson? I mean, what a circus this has been, and we're still not out of it yet. Do you think the league, and I know Goodell's almost handing this off as well, but do you think they go for the entire season? And do we see him play this year?
Well, I mean, what they recommended before the arbitrator made her initial ruling was a year's suspension and I believe an $8 million fine. He was smart to give it off to somebody else now with the appeal, because he would have lost the players if, having a system where they could appeal anything and it would go to Roger, that just didn't make any sense. So I don't know. I mean, I was shocked that you read what she said about him and options and then see what the punishment she handed out. I mean, it doesn't equate. So I don't know.
No.
I mean, I'm confused. I would have to think. I don't know anything about this Harvey, the guy that is going to be the arbitrator. It can't be any less. I'm sure of that. I would have to think that he'll end up with a steeper one, but will it be a year? I don't know.
Yeah, I hear.
Hey, Damo, how many years now have you made the trek to Canton for Hall of Fame inductions?
You know what, Derek? Actually, I don't come a lot.
Okay.
Lately, I have, because there's been Eagles involved. This year, Harold last year, Doc in 2017. I don't really like this whole thing. It's hot. As you can see, I'm sweating now. I got to go to the gold jacket tonight is inside, but beforehand you're outside, and tomorrow fortunately they've shortened the speeches, which I remember being here. I think it was 2017 when Doc went in. Ray Lewis also went in, and Ray talked for 2 days. I never saw. I'm a sweater, but this guy.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys remember that. Yeah. That gold jacket was just drenched by the time.
Yes.
His speech.
So I don't know. You look like you're enjoying it to me. You're out golfing today. You're in the sun. You get your health. You have a healthy environment.
Yeah, you look like you're in the middle of the forest. It looks good.
Look miserable to me. I'm just saying.
Well, you know what? I'm staying with some good friends that have a place right on the Firestone Country Club. So it's nice. That part's nice. I just don't like to go outside in this humidity.
I hear you. All right. Well, you can follow him on Twitter at PDomo, and also check out his great work, JAKIBsports.com, the 33rd Team, FB, Philly Mag. He's all over the place, man. You can't stop Domo. You can only hope to contain him, and that's not even going to happen. But
if anybody sees any loose training camp credentials flying around, grab one.
We'll take care of you. Yeah, I hear you. Thank you, Domo. Thanks for a couple minutes, man. Enjoy it. Have fun and stay cool this weekend.
Have fun, guys. Take care.
All right, that's Paul Domowitch. Good stuff on Vermeil. Good stuff on the Eagles right there from Domo. All right, let's step aside, guys. We will continue the football talk. Merrill Reese is going to join us at 2. Go ahead, Derek.
Hold on, Robbie. While we were interviewing Domo, I was texting back and forth with someone, and as of right now, don't hold me to it, because the last text I got from this person was, "Call me on Monday, please." So hopefully we will have Dick Vermeil himself on Monday or Tuesday.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
We're still working on it.
All right. Good work out of you, Gunner.
Yeah.
Gunner's always working, man. Doesn't matter when it is. He's always
fire, man.
That'd be fun. That would be fun for sure. All right, let's step aside. We'll come back. A couple things we're going to dig into. We'll keep going with the depth chart. Who's on the bubble? We'll get into some NFL stuff. Hey, did you see the Stafford stuff? Some problems with his elbow?
Yeah, and they said this. They're kind of concerned because they're saying it doesn't make sense, the type of pain he's going through. It's like
pitching elbow.
It's like what?
Pitching elbow.
Yeah,
yeah. Like he's on a pitch count right now, and Sean McVay called it abnormal.
Yeah,
it's never a good sign.
No,
but also, did you see Joe Burrow? Joe Burrow had
appendectomy. Yeah. So he's out a little bit as well. We'll talk about last night's game. One big name guy returned to practice today. We'll get into some free agents who are still floating around. Week 2 schedule, all kinds of stuff in store. So we'll dig into all that when we get back. So don't go.
Also, how is Baltimore's quarterback not signed yet?
Yeah, that's bizarre.
Yeah,
especially after Kyler Murray got his deal done. I'm really surprised at that.
If there was anybody who deserved a number like that more so than Kyler Murray, it would be Lamar Jackson.
Also, Baltimore's just such a good organization. Like that stuff doesn't usually happen there, and usually it's taken care of.
Yep.
So yeah, that one's weird, Barrett. We could talk about that too. That's one to keep your eye on where that goes for sure. All right, don't go anywhere. Phillies won last night as well. We'll dive into that. All kinds of stuff in store for you for the latter half of the program. We are Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network. D Gun, Barrett Brooks, Rob Ellis. Let's talk a little Razor technology. All right, with cyber threats like ransomware on a seemingly endless uptick and the risk of a breach or data loss higher than ever, we need to know, and you need to know, just who is accessing your network systems and applications, because that mission can be critical. Identity management from Razor Technology is a holistic framework of policies and technologies that lock down access to the right users for only the right reasons. We deploy cutting-edge solutions that identify, authenticate, and monitor access across your entire IT system. Razor Technology determines how users gain identity to your system, what roles they need to fill, and enforces access controls and network protocols, digital certificates, behavioral analysis, and secure authentication methods. Talk to Razor Technology today to learn how to identify management and can reduce the risk of data breach while avoiding costly errors and downtime due to lack of access. Contact Razor Technology at 797-3282, 866-797-3282, or visit us online at razor-tech.com. That's razor-tech.com.